Any health-related information on the following show provides general information only. Content presented on any show by any host or guest should not be substituted for a doctor's advice. Always consult your physician before beginning any new diet, exercise, or treatment program.
Welcome to the Power Your Life radio show with host and success doc Joanne White. Author, speaker, certified coach, and energy master, Doc White gets to the heart of what matters most. She features guests and experts to help you consciously create more success, health, and wellness in every area of your life, work, and relationships. They'll share their success stories, wisdom, and know-how to help you shine more light onto your day and into your life. Power your life right now. Here's Joanne White.
Hello, everyone, and welcome, and hope wherever you are, you're having a wonderful day, a wonderful evening. And many of us really are figuring out what we need to do in terms of teaching our children important aspects that are more like life skills rather than just math and physics and science and whatever. And life skills are really very important. Life skills are what helps our children actually move forward and be able to make decisions and choices when they face different kinds of social situations or different kinds of situations with safety. And so that's what we're going to get into today, because I'm very excited that I have Katherine Eskovitz, who is a parenting expert, author, and founder of Little Blueprint. She helps to hello tonight. She helps to empower your children to boost their brain power with her plan-based parenting. Katherine is a graduate of Yale Law School and Cornell University. She practiced law as a federal prosecutor and a partner in a national firm before turning her courtroom skills and experience as a former speechwriter to writing for a new audience, and that new audience is children. She collaborated with experts and spent years researching child development and brain science and founded Little Blueprint, which creates customized have-a-plan books for children of all ages. And what these books do is they empower children by teaching them skills to develop their own plans for a lifetime. Katherine also is a parenting educator and speaks nationally and is the specialist on plan-based learning at schools nationwide. So welcome, Katherine.
Thank you. It's great to be here today.
It's a pleasure. So let's talk a little bit by what you mean by plan-based parenting. What's that about?
Sure. Well, it's an approach to parenting that's grounded in brain science to help children really as young as age 3 or even younger, depending on the child, to strengthen and develop their executive function skills, which are sort of the highest level cognitive processes, the processes required to plan. So even from the youngest ages, whether it's 3 on or 30 years, that actually what your brain's doing to develop a plan is very similar. It just becomes more sophisticated and deeper as you grow older.
So I want to ask you a question, though. We're going to
Sure.
jump in here a little bit. When you say executive skills, executive functioning, what specifically is that? Because oftentimes I've actually seen kids where they've had testing and it says that they are lacking executive functioning skills. So what does that mean to a parent, and what does that mean that a child is lacking?
Well, it's a great question, and it's an area that there's a lot of focus on right now. But basically, executive function skills or executive skills are the brain-based skills that are required to execute tasks. So getting organized, planning, initiating work, staying on task, controlling your impulses, regulating your emotions, basically being adaptable and resilient. Just about everything, a child would need to negotiate the demands of life, and adults need as well. So those skills we're learning when the brain is malleable and young and they're developing. It's a great time to practice those skills. And practicing them, it's just like exercising. We want to strengthen that muscle. We want to strengthen executive function skills early.
So oftentimes, though, that's not something that they necessarily teach in school. Is that true? Or
You're right, and more there's beginning to be more emphasis on this because people, research is showing that IQ scores are not necessarily the best predictor of success in life, but actually cognitive executive function skills are one of the best predictors of success in life. So this is becoming an area of more focus, but what Little Blueprint is about is, you're born with a genetic blueprint, but you have the ability to reach your full potential and develop that blueprint by practice. So it's about teaching children from the youngest ages to empower them to practice developing their own plans. And so you can apply that to any situation in life.
So when you're talking about developing your own plan, it's like starting from a particular, I'm trying to help our listeners understand it. So starting from a particular point, let's say point A, and being able to plan the consecutive steps that somebody would take to get to, let's say, their final destination point, which is Z. And I'm not necessarily talking about travel, but completion of a task. Is that correct?
Yes, but it's more about whether it's, celebration of a holiday or a hardship such as the loss of a loved one. It's more about taking a situation that's new to a child and deconstructing what it means to develop a plan into 4 easy steps. So you basically teach children to lead. So when I say lead, I mean LEAD. L is logic. You're going to learn facts about a new situation. E is emotions. You're going to explore how children and others feel about that situation. A is analysis, and this is where the guidance from parents is most helpful. Analyze ways to approach a situation. You can brainstorm together. And D is decision making. You're going to develop a plan. And it sounds complicated, but when you break it down into simple steps, particularly through a storybook for children, they are able to, from the youngest ages, practice this skill of developing a plan. So you can apply it to any situation. You can apply it to sleep or nutrition. You can apply it to divorce. You can apply it to anything from the happiest of celebrations to really the most difficult of life's challenges, this sort of philosophy or approach of developing a plan and then how to change the plan as things evolve. Kids learn resilience and they learn flexibility from this skill.
Oh, so I think it's fascinating, and I think it again, what you said, the research is suggesting that it's so sorely needed, and unfortunately, I actually come across some high school students and also college students who were never taught that, which is where you come in because you're doing this at an early age, and therefore they're struggling. They may be incredibly bright, but they're struggling because they're lacking in these executive function skills. So how do you work with Go ahead.
One of the positive things that brain research has showed, because we know through neuroplasticity that the brain is malleable, that at any age this weakness can be improved with practice. Obviously, always better to start young, but at any age this is a skill that can be practiced.
So how does somebody practice a skill like that?
Well, with Little Blueprint, for example, if you do it through stories, one of the ways you do it is you do this 4-step process of deconstructing the plan. So you don't want to base your life decisions purely on logic, nor do you want to base them purely on emotions, right? When you're encountering a new situation, right, you want to integrate these key systems of the brain. So you want to use your logic, learn facts about something. You want to consider the emotions that are involved, which also means empathy, understanding how other people are feeling in a situation. You want to bring those two things together to analyze the situation, come up with possibilities for how to approach a situation, and then develop a plan. So obviously, if you're 30 years old, that's going to be a lot more sophisticated and thoughtful than when you're 3 years old, but the simple process and the steps are the same. But if you encounter a situation and you approach it with this mindset, you do start to become more organized and you're able to have better anticipatory behavior than if you just accidentally approach a situation. So
Little Blueprint, does it work for children of all ages, or is it mostly geared for younger children? Because I know that you have books, and I have some of the books, thank you, that you've so kindly sent me. But these books are primarily for younger children. So what's the gamut that Little Blueprint serves?
Well, it certainly starts young, and it ranges to older children, and newer titles that will launch will increasingly be for older ages, but it depends on the title. So, for example, nutrition, that subject matter, might be for any age child. I mean, there's things in it that most adults would not know that they're going to learn when they read the book. And a lot of our books have blueprint boxes. So there's sort of one narrative that's very simple for younger children, and then the blueprint boxes add another level of sophistication for older children, so they learn new things as well. But basically, our books start young. For example, there's a few safety books: safety at home, safety on the go, safety of the body, and we'll have safety in cyberspace. You want to start safety at home is going to be for the youngest age and increasingly older children as you go. So our books range the gamut, but depending on the subject matter, you want to start young. And then there are really difficult subjects like death and divorce that a child of any age would really benefit, and adults as well, from reading these, because they're almost scripts for adults. When they don't have time to read all the different parenting books, they provide the words for children.
So what are some of the necessities for safety in cyberspace?
Well, that's a really interesting subject, because right now a lot of the focus has been on safety in cyberspace for teens.
Right.
However, there's really virtually nothing out there for young children. I mean, there are kids 3 years old on these tablets, right? Kids are starting really young now with electronic devices. So there needs to be, before children are going on the internet and playing Moshi Monsters or any of these little toddler games, they need to have some basic rules. You don't just take a child to the playground without talking about some very essential safety rules. Well, children need to understand that when you go on the internet, this is a public playground. Just some basic groundwork so they understand what's going on when you go on the internet for the first time, that this is a public playground and there are strangers who are also on the internet. So it's sort of laying the framework so children understand what it is that they're going on, and they understand that you have to use your basic safety rules, whether you're at a playground or you're on the internet. And so we're going to start young. That title's coming out soon, but the idea is to start younger than people are educating children. Really start young when they're first getting on the computer.
I totally think that, like you said, it's mostly the caution has mostly been for older kids, and yet, like you say, kids are on it so young. So I think this is something that's very, very important, and I think it will actually get some wonderful results. So speaking of parents and the need, how are parents responding to these books and to Little Blueprint? I know you go around the country and you're educating parents and you're talking about what's necessary. What are some of the commentary that you receive?
It's been amazing. I mean, it's overwhelming, the support and the outpouring. The most frustrating thing for me has been how many titles people are anxious for us to come out with, and I wish we could have launched with all 100, 200 titles, because you have to work with experts and painstakingly make sure that they're everything they need to be. Each title takes a long time to develop. So I have experts and parents constantly contacting me saying, when are you coming out with the book about cancer, and when are you coming out with the book on dyslexia and allergies? And there's so many that we have in the pipeline, and that's the most frustrating thing to me, that it can't all be there tomorrow. However, the approach is what is so essential, because whether you have the book or not, parents can start to apply these tools at home. And these are tools that have been used for a long time in therapy and with children with very special needs, but everyone can benefit from an approach of plan-based parenting where you're empowering children to be part of developing these plans. So it's not just you being a dictator or having a democracy. It's somewhere in between. It's teaching your children skills to be able to plan on their own, which is ultimately your goal, right? That they can thrive in life with meaningful plans and in different situations. And you start young by practicing that. So if you're having a big struggle at bedtime with your child and it's dragging on forever, or you're rocking them to bed for hours and they're not getting the sleep they need, you need to approach it by taking the tug-of-war away or taking the complete empowerment of the child away, and together you need to develop a plan. And it teaches responsibility, it teaches ownership, they learn skills, and they feel a sense of control over their lives. And that's very, very effective.
Well, there's been a lot of research that I've looked at recently. I have a background in education, and that research is that when children feel that they have more control and they have more regulation, they are happier, they are more emotionally secure. So all of what you're doing really ties in to that as well. Let's talk a little bit more about the brain science. I know we touched upon it, but to me, the whole brain is such a fascinating subject, and I'm sure our listeners will love to know more. So how did you kind of explore this with needing that information and getting that information in terms of brain science, and what is that all about?
Well, the way it came about was I was a lawyer, and so I was used to sort of meeting with experts and researching subjects and then synthesizing the information for a jury so they could handle the complex facts and make decisions. And so it was this odd transition when I became a parent. I, without consciously being aware of it, I think started applying some of those approaches to my children as we encountered new situations. I wanted to know what was the research behind it, what was going on in their brains, and I would start doing research, and then I would start synthesizing it so I could teach them or write books for them when I couldn't find what I wanted. And somewhere along this journey, I became really fascinated with the brain and the science behind it and what was going on in their development and what they were capable of. At the same time, I was writing these books. And I started getting more and more requests for these books from friends and friends of friends. And that sort of started the whole process. And Dr. Dan Siegel, who's on our advisory board, has spent his life studying the brain and writing about the brain. And a lot of this links into his theories about the brain, which is that you need to integrate the key systems of the brain to become, whether it's a whole child or a whole person, in order to have the strongest executive function skills that you can, and really, which is the ultimate goal, being able to plan meaningfully and have impulse control and resilience, you need to exercise that part of the brain. And in order to do that, you have to integrate all the systems of the brain, logic, the emotions, the planning. And so what we're doing by practicing planning is integrating those key systems, which ultimately is strengthening whether it's the prefrontal cortex or where the executive function skills are. Essentially, that's what it's doing.
So the key functions are logic, emotions, analysis, decision-making, planning. What
so
are
that's exactly the 4-step approach that I developed for Little Blueprint is to teach children to lead, which is logic, emotions, analysis, and decision making. And by doing that, you're integrating the key systems of the brain and ultimately strengthening executive functioning through practice. And so, and in the step where you're analyzing ways to approach a situation, what's so important about that is for every subject, whether it's sleep or whether it's mourning the loss of a loved one, there's certain universal skills that you can teach children that are also based on brain research and scientific studies. For example, journaling, which is a way of making implicit memories explicit. And there are mindfulness techniques such as, a good night talk, which is a type of guided meditation where you promote relaxation and better sleep. There's ways of using imagery as cognitive behavioral technique to teach positive thinking. So each of these sort of suggestions you may have in a certain subject are teaching very specific skills for the brain.
Now, have you worked at all with educators and helped them to see this at all? I'm just curious because I think it could be fascinating in the school system as well.
Well, I've been asked to speak about this in different schools, and it's been interesting in my travels. I've met many other interesting educators who are fascinated and focused on this as well from different angles. There have been many books for parents written about strengthening executive function skills and about parenting in general, but not as many, and that's why I started writing the books for children, because I just feel like, myself included, we as parents don't always have time to read every parenting book and decide what's important and what's not and synthesize it all in order to present it to our children. A lot of that research could be done and presented to children. So that was my idea, was let's take these tools and digest them and give them simply to children. So they're learning some new facts. They're learning and understanding about empathy and compassion, and then they're learning how to analyze and make decisions, and you're guiding them through that process. But really, it's giving an easy book that takes you through the steps without having to read thousands of pages on parenting philosophy to get there.
Which is a blessing for because life is so busy. So it's actually very important for families. I'm sure parents are very grateful for this for what you're doing.
I
Now,
know the irony, I think, is now that I've launched this and have been so busy in this process, I have less time to write books for my children. That's the funny part about all this. They joke about it, and they now they're very good at writing their own, but they'll talk about it and tease me and say, when am I getting my Have a Plan book or this on that? And I say I'll add it to the list because now it's become a much larger endeavor than I ever could have imagined.
Except they're writing it, so they're actually executing their executive function.
Yeah, they get a lot of practice on it at our house now. There's a lot of talk about plans.
So I think it's really very important. So the question is that you were working, in law, and it's fascinating how you were able to make this transition. What do you think? Oops, sorry about that. I thought it was unplugged.
No problem.
What do you think is the most important book that needs, I know there's so many, but the most important book, or maybe the most well-received book right now that people are looking at and parents are saying that it's a necessity for their children?
Wow, it's a tough question. It really depends on what is going on in your child's life at the time, particularly. One, the sleep book, When It's Time for Bed, I Have a Plan, is a very popular book because I think that's just such a universal problem with children getting the sleep that they need, adults as well. But so that's a huge book for us, but I think it's because it's such a common problem. And we're coming out next month with a book on nutrition, which I'm very, very, very excited about because I just think there's nothing like it out there that really is incorporating these brain-based concepts and the idea of empowering children to be active and taking a role in eating healthy.
So let's talk about that one, because I think that
Sure.
nutrition is very important, and statistically, this country really, families are eating very poorly, kids are getting obese, and it just seems to be an issue for many, many families. So it's so important for somebody to tackle that. So tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I became interested in it for all those reasons. To Be a Healthy Eater, I Have a Plan is the title of the book. And what I wanted to do was to educate children, not just march the food groups in front of them so they understood what a protein is, but to actually educate children that we're not just going to trick you and disguise vegetables and put them on their plate. You need to understand why this is important, because children want to do the right thing. They want to be problem solvers, and they want to be healthy. So the idea of To Be a Healthy Eater, I Have a Plan is the same concept of teaching children to lead. So you're going to teach them some logic. They're going to learn facts about what is so important about being a healthy eater. Why is it? What's going on in your body when you're eating junk food? And how do you feel when you eat junk food, and how you crash, and how you can get cavities, and what sugar is doing to you? And so you talk about healthy food versus junk food, and educate them a little bit about nutrition and the emotions involved when you're eating poorly and what can happen. And you're going to analyze ways to approach healthy eating. So there's a lot of research out now that studied hundreds of children and found that children can change their eating patterns. It's not just, oh, my child's a picky eater. You have to actively change that. So the way you do that, and you teach children, do you know that food scientists have studied that children who actually take a bite of something 14 days in a row that they don't like, a healthy food that they don't like, can change their palate and begin to like that food? Now, that's a fascinating discovery, and it's something that children should be challenged to embrace. It's not easy, but how about if your child doesn't like eggs, that you make a deal with them? You're going to do a 14-day challenge where you try a bite for 14 days. There really are changes in your palate that happen when you do this, and that's what all the research shows. So you have to present these ideas to children and make them a part of this process. So whether it's suggesting the 14-day challenge, or to eat a heavy protein breakfast, whether it's a protein shake, or to eat a rainbow of fruits or vibrant veggies, that you want to eat lots of different colors because there's different nutrients and different colors of vegetables and fruits, or whether you need to drink a lot of water because your body, it's like taking a shower from the inside out. All of these things are concepts you can teach your children about nutrition, where they are empowered to pick something or pick a few things and make a difference. Keep a food journal. So the storybook takes you through where the child's the hero of the story. They're going to learn about nutrition, they're going to understand the emotions, and they're going to analyze all these different ways to become a healthy eater. And then there's a sample plan at the end, which you can personalize. And the last page of every one of our books is my plan. So it would be Catherine's plan or Phoebe's plan or Dylan or Lexi's plan, where children make their own plan on the last page.
So they get to look at all the options. They get to hear another child's story that's inside. They get to see how it evolves, and then they get to create their own plan.
Right. And the sample plan is always very helpful because whether it's our ready-made book or the personalized book where you can go online and put in your sample plan, you may be a family that's vegetarian or gluten-free or nut allergy or a sugar allergy, whatever it is. You can tailor that to your family and teach children what are some suggestions. So you're using age-appropriate suggestions, and you're challenging them to be a part of this process. And children get really excited about that. They're going to go to the supermarket and pick out one new vegetable to try, or they're going to keep a food journal about what they like or didn't like, or they're going to challenge themselves to have less sugar during the week, or they're going to eat less processed food and more whole food. Whatever it is, they're going to pick some of these things and try them, which is fantastic. So you don't just walk away saying, now I know what protein is and now I know what a carbohydrate is, but you're actually going to actively try to make a difference as a child. You're going to be empowered to challenge yourself to try something new.
So when you say challenge, or you're going to challenge a child, or a child's going to challenge himself or herself, what do you mean by that?
Well, the whole concept of developing their own plans is exciting to children because, like you said, they feel a sense of ownership and control over an event in their lives. And so when you have this page, this blank page at the end that's my plan, and you're going to write down suggestions that among the things you've learned in the book, or you're going to brainstorm with your parents, then you feel a sense of responsibility to follow through on that plan, right? Because now you have it, you've put it up on the refrigerator, you're going to look at it, and you're going to try to enact that plan because children and adults strive for success and they feel empowered. They're now part of this process. So it's very effective with children because they've learned something, they've thought about the emotions involved, they've analyzed it, and now here's their plan and they want to be successful and execute it. And of course this takes a lot of practice. But along the way, when you're dealing with a specific situation, you're also learning these lifelong skills of practicing planning, which you can apply to everything throughout your life. So it's always helpful to practice these skills.
So when have you worked directly with children other than your children? You're educating parents. Have you seen the responses of children after going through these books and after this 4-based plan?
Sure. Well, it's interesting. When I do a school presentation, let's say we're reading a certain subject, and then we pass out my plan pages and children write their plans. The very first time you do this with children, depending on their age, they usually do it in a minute, right? You know, this happens all the time, whether it's with your own kids or other kids. It's teaching them how to stretch it and add the details and go through it, and that's why you go back to the book and say, well, what other suggestions can we add? You're going to guide them through this, and obviously different ages will have different levels of specificity to their plans. But the very first time you do it, generally speaking, kids are really quick. And what's amazing to watch is how that evolves after children have been doing this for a while, and I've seen this with different groups of children, how much better they get at this, and parents as well, at adding layers to their plans and realizing they're going to, once they see the consequences, they're going to follow through on this. And there's been school studies about this in preschools and kindergartens. It's fascinating in different parts of the country where they have had this approach where children write about what their play plan is going to be that day at preschool on the playground, and then they go back and review it, and they learn the consequences of what works and what doesn't, right? And then they go back and their plans evolve and they execute them better the next time, and it's been remarkably successful in the schools that have tested this and then looked at test scores and reading scores and social skills and behavioral issues, and everything has improved when they've implemented these curriculums. So it's something that's catching on. It's just not something that's being done mainstream or at home as much, and I'm hopeful that parents will become more and more educated about this approach.
Have you thought of doing any research with this so that you have some hard facts to present?
There's been a lot of research done about it through this preschool and kindergartens and testing of it with a plan-based curriculum. And so we're hopeful that through that research, parents will be encouraged to try this at home through Little Blueprint, through the books. And it's such a helpful tool we found from the feedback from parents, especially when they're undergoing a situation that they don't have time to prepare for, something like divorce or death, where they really need the words and the help for their children. These books are extremely useful. But the research is, the book Nurture Shock discusses it a lot. Of the research of the plan-based curriculums in schools has been overwhelming.
Nurture Shock? What's that about?
So Nurture Shock is a book that discusses a lot of different research and different areas and how it applies to parenting, whether it's sleep or different areas. And one of the chapters discusses just the remarkable impact on children at these schools that were in Detroit and then New Jersey, and how they couldn't get over how IQ scores and behavioral issues were disappearing when they started this sort of plan-based approach, this curriculum. And they did some many follow-up research studies on it because it was so effective. And now it's schools, they're observed. People go and observe these curriculums and have followed up on the research because it has been so helpful to children across the board. Both social and intellectual skills are improved.
What's your most important message to parents?
I guess I would say the most important thing is that children are empowered to have some sense of control over their lives, to be part of helping themselves in their lives, because ultimately you want them to be able to be independent and thrive. And so the younger you start that process, and it's amazing how again and again I've underestimated the abilities of my own children and how capable they are at such an early age to be part of this process. And I always remind myself that the kids are so wise, the things that come out of their mouth. So I would just remind myself included and all parents that children need to be empowered to be part of the plans of their lives.
And I think when children participate in the planning process, like you said, they not only do they feel empowered, but it becomes more effective because they feel like they're a part of it and they're creating it, and therefore it has to be good. And it's not like, okay, I'm kind of, my mother is telling me one thing and I want to do something different. So it probably also, and I don't know if there's research on this, Katherine, but I think it would also create more positive relationships between parent and child because it's kind of like a co-creative process.
You really hit it on the head. I mean, that's exactly right. You're taking the tug of war out of the parenting, and you're reminding everyone that you're on the same team here. So it's positive. It's very positive thinking. You're teaching anticipatory behavior together. You're discussing situations proactively, and that positively impacts the lives of others. It teaches moral development, not just intellectual intelligence, but also social and moral skills as well. So this future-oriented positive thinking that you're doing together with your children has a lot of positive benefits as a result.
So what are the next books coming out? Since you said there's
that's always the biggest question. Nutrition's coming out, and there's going to be journals with them. We're big believers in journals for children to be able to start young with the process of writing down or drawing for pre-readers their thoughts. It's very helpful for processing what's going on. So a lot of our suggestions involve journaling, so we'll have that to go with the books. But nutrition's coming out, and we have a book of cancer that's coming out, a book on preschool, a book on siblings. Many titles are in the pipeline. I wish they could all be here today.
Do you have a book on recognizing disabilities and just differences and special needs? Because I see that as something that's really very important given what the state of affairs are here.
We do have that. There's an expert I'm working with on that book right now. So for every book, we have a lead expert and a few other teams of experts that are leaders in the field that work on the books together with myself.
That must be exciting for you as well, right?
That's been such a great part of this journey, I would say, and also a continuation of what I was doing as a lawyer. I love learning about new areas, and I love working with experts on these. I've learned so much every day, and I'm always hopeful that these books, although they're for children, every one of them should teach parents something new. That would be a nice goal as well.
So when you work with parents, what are some things that parents say that they've learned, so that they've come from, that they've received from the books, in part and parcel of their teaching? They're coming away with a it's not really a curriculum, but what they've learned and what they, not just for their children but for themselves.
Well, it's interesting. For example, with the sleep book, I mean, each subject there are little tidbits that people will learn about, what makes whole grain different than white bread. Parents will learn little tidbits throughout these books of facts that are just fascinating. But in addition to that, I think the most interesting thing that parents are taking away is just reminders for themselves, because everything you apply to children throughout these books, you can apply to parents as well. So even the different techniques for going to bed and the relaxing techniques or writing in a journal, deep breathing, I think a lot of parents, I get comments regularly emailed to me about how they've started doing that more for themselves as well, because the books are kind of a reminder for parents. And that's very helpful. It's a reminder for me, too, when I reread a lot of these books.
So what's one of the most important facts from the books, because you've worked with other experts and educators, that you have gleaned from one of the books that's, wow, this is something that I needed to remember, or that needed to be reinforced, or that I didn't know?
I think that an overriding theme in a lot of these books is mindfulness, is really going through your life intentionally and thoughtfully and meaningfully, and that applies to parents as well. And it's something I think a lot about. I've been trying to learn meditation as a very A-type person whose mind is always too busy. I have a really hard time learning how to meditate. It's something I've struggled with, but I believe in deeply. And I think whether it's meditation or other techniques like writing in a journal or discussing a plan, there's so many ways to be more meaningful and live in the present in your life. And so I think these books are another way of teaching that for children, but also for adults. Let's not go through life accidentally or without any thought, but let's do this meaningfully. So even, for example, the holidays become just about presents when it comes to kids, right? It's like, what do I want for the holidays? Presents. But the holidays are so meaningful, and sometimes in all the rush we lose sight of that. And so to celebrate the holidays, I Have a Plan is a book about what does the holiday really mean, and what are some things we can do to make sure it's meaningful? What's our plan for the holidays? And to slow down the whole process and live in the present and make it more meaningful. And so that theme is throughout every book.
So the holidays are about tradition and family and honoring different kinds of, whether it's religious or secular, honoring different ceremonies. And so it kind of gives it more depth than just let's go for the presents and for the turkey, and that's it.
Exactly. And that kids, will realize one day, but to teach them young, that what they're going to remember is not the gift. They're going to remember the tradition that was surrounding it, the night with the family. And so, and to start teaching at an early age gratitude and giving. The holidays are such a great way to teach those things. So whether it's holidays or it's, encountering some new challenge, the idea of being present and thinking about it meaningfully is something that I know I daily could use help in remembering, and we all could.
Yeah, I think it is very important. And I think, like you said, we kind of gloss over that very quickly, and we don't really focus on the meaning behind it. And it's great to be able to bring back that meaning. And again, as you do that, I think it also makes families more cohesive and more appreciative of one another and of their ancestry and where they've come from. I want to talk a little bit about mindfulness or about meditation for you and for our listeners, because I think that we all have been told that meditation is just one certain way, that you have to sit quietly, and there are so many other forms of meditation, which is a form of meditation, which is actually, there are walking meditations. And for somebody like you and like me, who are type A personalities, a walking meditation is a way to really get into utilizing movement to kind of slow down your brain, and also just being able to get to a place of quiet. So
It's so great that you raised this. I just read. Have you read 10% Happier yet by Dan Harris?
no.
Oh, it's so great. He's an anchorman, and it's about his journey and how difficult it was for him to learn how to meditate. So it's not written from an expert point of view, but for someone who really struggled with it. It's just a fantastic book. But what I've learned is this is something my children and I, we can all embrace together. And so, my son, who's 8, said the other night, "Oh, that's not for me. I'm too active." And I said, that's exactly the point. We have monkey minds, and we all need to take time where we slow down and breathe deeply and quiet our brains and have that moment to be mindful. And so it's something we've sort of all done together. And in my sleep book, it comes with a free audio download, which is essentially a guided meditation for children. And that came out of the need I felt for children to learn some of these exercises at an early age. And for my children, it's been incredibly helpful, and then the spread to other children as well. So Jennifer Garner narrated it for us. She's a beautiful, soothing voice, and it's a very sweet talk. So it's not so long. It's very short, but it really introduces children to sitting calmly, breathing deeply, practicing imagery, and it's the beginning of learning how to meditate. And it's a beautiful goodnight chat with the brain. And it's talking to yourself. I know you don't want to go to sleep, but now's the time we're going to take a deep breath and lie back and close our eyes. And it walks children through it. And I couldn't find guided meditations for my children that I liked, so I wrote my own, and we had it narrated by Jennifer. And it's my children ask for it all the time. It's something that's taught them a tremendous amount, and I get emails about this as well. That's something that parents start doing with their children, and then they apply it to their lives as well. That's certainly what's happened with me. I realized, this is something that would be really good for my children, and then I realized I need this as much as anyone. So it's something like you said, I struggle with daily, and I've tried the different types of approaches, and I realized that it's, to me, just like I think empowering children to develop plans, learning how to meditate, it's all about practice. It's just doing something consistently, and that's
Right.
a skill that I'm trying to build.
And again, like it's not, I think sitting quietly is wonderful, but you can actually get to that quiet place through many other ways. And I was on a radio show earlier where we were talking about that, and I was talking about walking meditation, and also what the Buddhists use is sometimes they have their eyes open. So many people think that meditation is about being with your eyes closed. Well, they'll do a meditation with their eyes open, whereby a thought will come into their head, and rather than get upset that, oh my God, I'm thinking, or get away or whatever, or begin to focus on the thought, they'll just do something like a little mantra that says thinking, thinking, thinking.
Right.
So basically you're training your brain to be quiet, and you have this thinking that comes in that just kind of silences everything else. And I think what you're doing with teaching meditation is so important, because at a young age, because children are not taught, they're looking at all their electronics and cyberspace and all these games on their little toys and whatever, and apparatus, and what they're not doing is being able to be quiet or be still. And I think it really is affecting. There've been studies done recently, but how our brains are changing, or especially in kids, because of all the busyness that they're doing with technology and not being able to focus for long periods of time and not being able to read large chunks of information. And so I think that the meditation not only helps in quieting the brain and getting the body more balanced, but it also has an expansive quality to our thinking. Because when the brain is quiet, when the mind is quiet and all that non-essential mind chatter happens, more significant information can actually filter through.
I couldn't agree with you more. The way you described it with children, I think it's, to me, just the beginning of how mainstream this is going to become with children. My daughter even came home from school recently and said the school psychologist came in and discussed meditation with them and did exercises with them. I think this is going to be something that's going to be happening in more and more schools and homes, because the image of it is starting to change, and the research is out, and people are realizing how significant it is. But I found that starting with a very short guided meditation with my children was effective, and then they like to record their own guided meditations, which is a way of, record it on my iPhone, and we play it. And that's one of the suggestions in my sleep book for children is you can record your own. Children love to hear themselves talk calmly for, 30 seconds, 2-minute talk. My daughter was having nightmares about a scary ride she went on when she was a child and was afraid every night she was going to have a nightmare about it. So she recorded a little talk to herself, and we played it for 6 months. Every single night she requested it.
Wow.
And it was her way of dealing with her fears and overcoming her anxiety and being mindful. And it really made a tremendous difference. She slept through the night and she overcame it. But that was 6 months, and she played this recording of her own that she made. So I think that's a very effective way of empowering children, where they can not only listen to something, but make something themselves, if that's something that helps them.
I think it's great. And again, it's also reinforcing the creative process. Katherine, we are out of time. Tell people how they can contact you, how they can buy these incredible books and learn more about plan-based parenting and Little Blueprint.
It has been a pleasure. Everything I've discussed and more is at littleblueprint.com. So you can find it at littleblueprint.com.
Thank you so much, and have a wonderful day. Katherine, you've been wonderful. I appreciate it.
It was a pleasure. Thanks so much.
What do a young girl, a few angels, a cosmic shaman, and an ancient goddess have in common? Can they show you the deeper mysteries of this life? Can they guide you to a deeper, more soul-nourishing understanding of yourself and others on this beautiful planet? The only way you'll ever find out is to open up a copy of Cosmic Headphone, an uncommon novel for revolutionary souls, and read it. Cosmic Headphone by Anne Preciado Rich is available at Amazon.com. Amazon.com, Cosmic Headphone. And we are going to be shifting gears, folks, because next week we are actually having a psychic on, and Karen Page, who actually has been a psychic for the stars and also for heads of state, and she is actually going to be sharing her wisdom and her books, and is also going to be receiving and giving readings on the phone. So make sure that you tune in and make sure that you get a reading by Karen. And if you've missed anything of this wonderful show today, if you tuned in late, you can actually be very blessed. And the replay is on Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern on the Women for Women Network. And hopefully we'll hear you and see you and get your comments, because we love your comments. This is Dr. Joanne White. You can find out more about Power Your Life Radio and Power Your Life TV at drjoannewhite.com. And there are lots of articles and free information and lots of my books. And it's been a pleasure to share this evening with you. And it's always a pleasure to remind you, and also myself, as Katherine's been talking about empowerment, which is really very, very powerful, but to remind you that you have the power to power your life and you can be empowered. Go to Little Blueprint and check out these wonderful books, not only for your children, but also for you, because you will get so much out of it. They're rich. They actually give you a lot of experiential information and wonderfully, as Katherine put so beautifully, actually help to teach you and your children this this plan-based approach and introducing this 4LEAD way of learning. So thank you so much for tuning in, and hope to hear you and see you again and connect with you again next week, next Thursday on Power Your Life.
You've been listening to the Power Your Life radio show with host and author Dr. Joanne White. Listen often and spread the word about the upbeat show to enrich you and grow your life in the direction you desire. Listen again and again and visit docwhite.org for more information and find out how Dr. Joanne can benefit you. Thank you for sharing your day with us, and stay tuned for more exciting guests and events to come.